Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Gauranitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Do you want me to do it? Okay, one sec. Hare Krishna everybody, thank you for coming to this morning's Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 2, verse number 23. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Aho Bhakti Yam Stana Kala Kutam. Aho Bhakiyam Stana Kala Kutam. Jigam Asyapaya Ayad Api Asadvi. Okay, this is a long word. Jigamaya payayad. No, wait. No, I got it wrong. Jigamsaya payayad. Okay, we'll come back to that. Lebhe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema aho bakiyam stanakalakutam chigam sayapaya yadapyasadvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapaya yadapyasadvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapaya yadapyasadvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema. Okay, you guys wanna give it a go? Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapaya yadapyasadvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapaya yadapyasadvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema. Any more? Ladies? Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapaya yadapyasadvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapaya yadapyasadvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kam va dayalum sharanam vrajema. Okay, Okay, word by word. Aho, alas, Baki, the she-demon Putana, Yam, whom, Stana, of her breast, Kala, deadly, Kutam, poison, Jigamsaya, out of envy, Apayayat, nourished, Api, although, Asadvi, unfaithful, Lebhe, achieved, Gatim, destination, Dhatri Uchitam, just suitable for the nurse, Tata, beyond whom, Anyam, other, Kam, who else, Va, certainly, Dayalum, merciful, Sharanam, shelter, Rajema, shall I take? Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than He, who granted the position of mother to a she-demon, Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. Please repeat. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more powerful than He who granted the position of a mother to a she-demon Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. Purport. Here is an example of the extreme mercy of the Lord, even to his enemy. It is said that a noble man accepts the good qualities of a person of doubtful character, just as one accepts nectar from a stalk of poison. In his babyhood, he was administered deadly poison by Putana, a she-demon, who tried to kill the wonderful baby. And because she was a demon, it was impossible for her to know that the Supreme Lord, even though playing the part of a baby, was no less than the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. His value as the Supreme Lord did not diminish upon his becoming a baby to please his devotee Yashoda. The Lord may assume the form of a baby or the shape other than that of a human being, but it doesn't make the slightest difference. He is always the same Supreme. A living creature, however powerful he may become by dint of severe penance, can never become equal to the Supreme Lord. Lord Krishna accepted the motherhood of Putana because she pretended to be an affectionate mother, allowing Krishna to suck her breast. The Lord accepts the least qualification of the living entity and awards him the highest reward. That is the standard of his character. Therefore, who but the Lord can be the ultimate shelter? Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thank you all for coming to this morning's Bhagavatam class on a not so cold morning, but a wet morning. But you guys have no idea, do you? You just came from upstairs. Although some of you came from outside. It is raining out there, just in case you didn't know. I would like to seek the blessings of all the devotees assembled here and assembled online, and who will listen to this in the future one day by playing the class on record. So, without the mercy of the Vaishnavas, what can I say? I can say a lot of things, but they wouldn't make any sense. So, with your mercy, hopefully I can say something. I was reading a book called the Sarartha Darshini, very interesting book by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and we always hear how Harikatha is purifying. But he mentions there is a certain order in which it is purifying. He says it is most purifying for the speaker. He goes, then it is purifying for the inquirer, and then it is purifying for the listener. So, I'm here for my own purification. That's why I'm here to speak. It's a selfish motive. I don't really care about you guys. No, I do care about you, but I mainly speak for my own purification. So this is a very interesting chapter. We're at an important juncture in the Srimad Bhagavatam. What has happened so far? A little bit of history is Vidura goes to Dhritarashtra and tells him, look, this ain't right, what you're doing isn't right, you should give the kingdom back, your sons are evil, and everybody else, all your relatives are also evil, all your sons are evil, you should kick them out. Now daddy doesn't want to hear that, does he? So then he says, no, you leave. So he literally kicks Vidura out, takes all his belongings, and he's just left to wander the planet with the clothes he has. So Vidura accepts this as a mercy of the Lord. He travels, he visits holy places, and that's what he's been doing for quite a while. And in the meantime, what has happened is the battlefield of Kurukshetra has assembled, the war has happened, it's over, the Pandavas have won, okay? The King Yudhishthira is the king of the emperor of the world. Even Krishna has left the planet, okay, after doing his things. And at this time, Vidura comes across Uddhava as he reaches the banks of the Yamuna. And there he tells Uddhava, like, what's going on? What's the news? Because he doesn't know what's happened. There's no, BBC News, mobile phones. So he doesn't know what's going on in the world. So then he goes to Uddhava and says, so what's the news? What's happening? How is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? How are the Pandavas? How's everybody else? Can you tell me a bit more? So at that time, Uddhava is explaining to him the situation, and in that explanation, as he is describing Krishna's pastimes and Krishna, going back to the spiritual world and all of that, at that time he mentions about the magnanimity of the Lord, and at that point he mentions this interesting verse. It is a very interesting verse which we will look at today, because how can Krishna award the greatest benefit to somebody who comes to kill him? Isn't it? It's very interesting. When Krishna says, I reciprocate accordingly, but then someone comes to kill him, and then he gives them the position of a mother in the spiritual world. So how does that work? So we'll look at it today. But there are some interesting points that I mentioned in the purport. We don't want to discuss all of them. I was told when I was taught how to give class that you kind of stick to 3 points. If you do anything more than that, you lose people. So I'm going to stick to 3 points. Okay. First point is about Krishna being a baby. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have a little confession to make. I stayed in the brahmachari ashram for so many years, but let me tell you, the best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman, my mother. Okay, my mother. When I was a baby, and when you're a baby, it's really good fun. It's like all you need to do is you eat, you sleep, and you defecate, everything in the same place. You don't need to worry. You have no care in the world. You just do your thing. When you're hungry, you cry, and food comes. When you want to sleep, you cry, and you put to sleep. When you do your excretion, you cry, and it gets cleaned. Somebody comes and looks after you. They clean it, and guess what? They also get a lot of pleasure from it. Okay, so as a baby, everything's fun. Interestingly enough, as we get older and we're in our deathbed, we still do the same things. Okay, we eat, we sleep, and then we defecate, and it all gets cleaned up. But this time it's not fun anymore for whoever's doing it. Somehow it's fun when you're a baby, but it's not fun when you're older. But it's almost like you start off here as a baby, totally sheltered and helpless, and then you go through life, and then at the end you're going to end up in the same place. You just have a body that is much more bigger and not so much fun anymore. But the interesting thing is that when you're a baby, you're looked after. The baby is completely under the shelter of the parents, and they're looked after very well. Interestingly, they say, your parents love you, they save up money to look after you and do all this service. But when you die, you have to kind of figure it out yourself. I'm telling you this because when the Lord is a baby, He also does all the same things. Okay? But He's not helpless like we are when we are a baby. Sometimes people think, we'll come to it in a second, but babies are helpless and they're fully reliant on their parents, but not the Lord. He does it for the sake of pastimes. I was watching Netflix the other day, and there's a program, well, it's also on the BBC, called Our Planet. I do apologize if one of the brahmacharis was giving class, it would be like. So I was reading the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur the other day. My classes are like, so I was watching Netflix the other day, quoting authority, but I saw that a baby walrus is totally under the shelter of its mother for 3 years in the Arctic, where the ice is melting, and the mother has to take the baby everywhere it goes. It can't even go by itself to feed because the baby won't be safe. For 3 years, it clings on to the mother, like literally rides on the mother. Baby lions, lions are very powerful, but for the first 3-4 years, they can't do anything. They're just totally reliant on the mother. Elephants, up to even 10 years or 15 years, they don't do anything. They're just hanging out with their parents. And anyway, when they get to a certain age, the men are kicked out. Okay, the ladies stay with the family and the men kind of wander and do their thing. That's with elephants. Okay, so all animals, everybody, all living species in the world, when they're younger, they stay with their parents. But with the Supreme Lord, it's something different. Okay, when he is young, he's sheltered by their parents, but at the same time, he is also just as powerful. He can protect himself, and he has the same amount of potency regardless of what form he's in, regardless of which species he's in, regardless of what stage of life he's in, even as a baby. But Kamsa didn't know this. That's why what did Kamsa think? He thought, well, the 8th child of Devaki is going to kill me. So, now that he's still a baby, let me kill him now. So then when he grows up, he won't be able to bother me. Okay, I'll have no danger. So he's thinking in his offensive mind that, oh, I can kill the Lord when he's a baby because he's a baby, right? What's a baby going to do? They're totally sheltered. They're being looked after by their parents. If somehow I can send a demon to kill the baby, that's it, job done. He's a kid. When he grows up, he might be a bit more problem, but if I kill him when he's young, then problem solved. So that's what Kamsa's thinking. Because he's a demon, as Prabhupada explains. Prabhupada explains very nicely. He says that only a devotee can understand Krishna. Okay, demons cannot understand the Lord. And we see this throughout the history of the Bhagavatam, that every time the Lord appears in a certain form, the demons don't get it. Okay, it's been repeating all through the Bhagavatam. They just don't get it. When there was Hiranyaksha, Hiranyaksha the big demon. And when the Lord appeared as a boar, okay, you know what he thought? The Bhagavatam says he was actually quite amused. He was actually quite amused when the Lord appeared. And he said, "What is this? An amphibious beast." That's what the Bhagavatam says. He looks at the Lord and he goes, "What is this amphibious beast?" And he's quite amused with Varaha. And Varaha, anyway, there's a duel that happens between Varaha and Hiranyaksha with a club. When I was new to Krishna consciousness, I was always wondering that if Varaha is a boar, then he has hoofs. And if he's got hoofs, how do you hold a club? Because you got hoofs. You don't have fingers. That was my biggest question in Krishna consciousnness when I was new. It's like, how do you hold them with hoofs? So I looked up some pictures, and in all the pictures I saw, the hoofs were carefully hidden behind the head or behind a planet or somewhere else, because none of the artists figured out how to show, the hoofs. Anyway, moving on from the hoofs, the point is that Hiranyaksha also didn't realize that the Lord appearing in any form has the same potency. Okay, whether he comes as a boar, whether as a kurma, as a little baby, they don't understand, because he thinks that the Lord is a baby and a baby can be killed. Okay, so he sends Putana, and he sends Putana to kill the baby. Now, what she does is she also thinks the same thing, because obviously they're all of the same clan, they're all demons. So she puts poison on her breast and she tries to feed the Lord, and of course the Lord sucks the life out of her. Okay, now that's what happens there. Now, demons can't know the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also it is explained that bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha tato mam tattvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. It is explained that one can understand me as I am only by devotional service. So if one practices devotional service, then one can understand the Lord. Without practicing devotional service, it's difficult. You can know a few things philosophically, but to fully understand the Lord is one needs to be practicing. Okay. Now another point Srila Prabhupada also mentions is in the beginning of the purport here. Okay, let me find it for you. Okay, this is a very interesting point. It is said that a noble man accepts the good qualities of a person of doubtful character, just as one accepts nectar from a stalk of poison. And it is a very important point, because especially in the community of devotees, we can see so many things, so many devotees doing things that may not be quite right. And we may be very tempted to say, Prabhu, you're not doing this right. Okay, you're not doing that right. Sometimes that's one stage, we go and tell people. Another thing we do is we don't tell people, we think about it in our mind and then we tell somebody else. Now I don't know which one's worse. Which one do you think is worse? Finding faults or talking to other people about other people's faults? Huh? Talking to others about the faults. Either way, the idea is that if we see some devotees not doing something right, there are certain circumstances where you would tell them, there are other circumstances where you wouldn't tell them. Okay, let's look at those very quickly. Now first of all, unless you are somebody's guru, Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru, you wouldn't find faults with them. Okay, even if they are doing something wrong, even if they are doing something that you think they're doing wrong, and by you correcting them they would make progress in spiritual life, because you're not their spiritual master and it's not your responsibility, you wouldn't tell them. Why do you think that is the case? Why would you not tell them? Because it'll help them, right, if you tell them? If they don't listen, it's not beneficial.
But if you're not their guru,
yeah.
So they don't hear it. So you have to say something which is beneficial.
Okay, you have to say something that is beneficial, but it would be beneficial if you tell them, right? If they're not chanting the rounds properly, and if you tell them, that would be beneficial.
In Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the austerity of speech.
Yeah.
So you have to say something which is pleasing
Yeah.
and not agitating
Yeah.
and beneficial.
Okay.
Otherwise, we shouldn't.
All three. Okay. Thank you. Shilan Prabhu.
I was going to say, I think they'll be more likely to take action if it comes from an authority.
Yeah. If it's a spiritual master, if it comes from them, they're more likely to do it. Another thing that could happen is that it ruins your relationship with the devotee because they're not ready to accept. They don't see you in that position where you can give them advice, and they may go, "Who are you? Why are you telling me? Who are you to tell me?" And it just messes up your relationship. There is a very interesting story in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto, where what happens is when Krishna, I'm sure we've gone through this because we're on canto 3, is that when Krishna leaves the planet and then he goes to the spiritual world, and at this time what's also happened is Arjuna has gone to Dwarka. Okay, so he's in Dwarka, and he's figured out that this is what's happening, but he's not come back yet. And at this point Narada Muni is visiting Yudhishthira Maharaj in Hastinapur. And Yudhishthira Maharaj asks him, "What's going on? How is Krishna? Okay, in Dwarka, what's the situation there?" So Narada Muni is thinking, you know what he says? He says, "Yeah, good, everything's fine. Hare Krishna." That's what Narada Muni says. So even though it is true, okay, he doesn't tell him. And in the next verse it is explained that Narada Muni didn't want to, first of all, two things. First of all, he didn't want to bring grief prematurely to Yudhishthira, because he knows that ultimately Arjuna will go, he will find out, and he will come back and tell him, because Yudhishthira Maharaj sent him for that purpose, to see what Krishna is doing. So he said eventually he'll come back and tell him, and he will find out. Why do you want to unnecessarily make him upset now? When the time is right, he will find out. And secondly, why do you want to be the bearer of bad news if it's not your responsibility and ruin that relationship? Okay, he doesn't want to. Sometimes when you get bad news, you sort of start seeing the person who gives you the bad news as like, okay, it leaves sort of like a scar in your mind. Okay, that guy told me. Okay, that guy told me. Even though it's got nothing to do with him. Okay, no, I don't know why I'm looking at you, Venugopal Prabhu, but you're a good guy. But even when a good person gives you bad news, sometimes you start hating the person. So he says, if it's not needed, why ruin your relationship? Okay, why do that? Why just get somebody who is in the right authority to do that? So when it comes to a person's spiritual life, best not to tell them. Just let it be, carry on with your life, and their spiritual master, it is their duty to correct them and to teach them. Or eventually they'll find out the hard way, but either way, you don't need to tell them. So if our job is to see the good and encourage people. Okay, you see the right things and you encourage people, and all the faults, all the wrong things, that is up to the spiritual master to help correct. Another thing also you don't do is you don't tell people unless you're their authority as well, spiritual authority or service authority, even if someone's doing something wrong. Okay, you don't need to tell them. If you see someone's washing pots the wrong way, if you see somebody is like not bowing down, if you see somebody is, not wearing a bindi, or if you see somebody that is, whatever, then unless you're their authority, don't tell them. Okay, you'll just annoy them, and it kind of messes up your relationships with people. Let people do what they're doing. It's not your problem. If they're your peers, if they're your friends, what do you do then? Do you tell them? How do you decide if they're doing something wrong? You can.
But they don't take seriously.
Huh?
But they don't take seriously.
But they don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think when you've established a friendship, they're probably more going to listen to you, because it's that chastising, like someone you care about, or they care about you, probably more likely to listen to them.
Yeah. Prayojana Prabhu.
Wait for the right
Wait for the right moment. Yes, definitely wait for the right moment, but it also depends on several factors. First of all, it depends on how good of a friend you are. If you're just casual friends, or if you have a very good friendship. Second thing, it also depends on the person's ability to take feedback. Okay, sometimes you may have a good friendship, but you know that the person's nature is such that he may not be able to take certain type of feedback from you. Then you don't tell them. They'd be better off getting that feedback from somebody else. Okay? And if they are ready to take feedback, if you are good friends, then like Prayojan Prabhu said, you have to wait for the right moment. Okay? Don't do it at the wrong time. Sometimes they're okay to take feedback, but they already got like 3 pieces of bad news that morning, and you give them the 4th, that may not go down so well. Okay, so even if they're your peers, you have to be very, very careful. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, finding faults or correcting somebody can go wrong on so many different levels. So if you don't have to do it, don't do it. Leave it to the people who their authority to help correct them. Eventually, one way or another, Krishna will, if they are sincere in their devotional service, one way or another, Krishna will find a way to give them the message. It may not be right now, it may be a few months later or a few years later, but eventually if they are sincere, then Krishna will find a way to tell them one way or another through somebody or through an experience or something else. But if it's not your responsibility, don't make it your responsibility. Because don't think that you have to change the whole of ISKCON today and then correct everything because you're walking down the corridor and you see this person's doing something wrong, that person's doing something wrong. You want to change everything. But don't do it. Leave it. It'll happen in time. Okay? Also, if somebody is senior to you, don't tell them. It's almost like a no-brainer, but sometimes people think, well, when you say senior, does it mean senior in age, or does it mean senior in like spiritual authority? Somebody may be older than you, but they may be very new to Krishna consciousness. So that's okay. That's what people think. But the idea is no. Don't tell them either. If they're older than you in age, don't tell them. If they're senior to you in Krishna consciousness, definitely don't tell them. Okay? In general, the idea is don't tell anybody anything. Just carry on with your life. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Gaurnitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So in short, whether somebody is older, whether somebody is senior, even if they're your peer, then you can say a few things, but in general, don't say anything. It is not your responsibility to correct somebody, to teach somebody, unless you're in an authority where you're a spiritual master, where you're teaching a course, where you're service authority or something, or you're very good friends, and you do it at the right moment, under the right circumstances. But without all these things, better to not mention anything. So what should our mentality be? Like Srila Prabhupada says, that one should give them the benefit of the doubt. And one should see the positives like one accepts nectar from a stalk of poison. Okay? So always see the good and encourage people. Never find faults, and definitely don't talk about those faults with other people just for a cheap laugh. Okay? You're practicing Krishna consciousness for so many years. We're giving up so many things. Krishna consciousness is hard. We're giving up so many things. We're giving up, things you would normally do. You're chanting 16 rounds. You're living in the temple, or you're living outside and practicing Krishna consciousness. We're even giving up onion and garlic. Some people even chocolate. Okay, so many things you're giving up. It's very interesting. When I teach the Guru-Disciple course, it's like no one's got an issue with the 4 regulative principles. That's fine. Okay, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no gambling. Okay, all that is fine. Yeah, we don't worry about that. No onions and garlic. Yeah, no eggs. All that's fine. But when you talk about chocolate, everyone's got a problem. It's like all the big things. It's like, okay, we can do that easily, but don't ask me to give up chocolate. Anyway, I'm not asking anything. It's not my responsibility. So you can do what you like. But the point is that, what was I saying? I forgot what I was saying. Not finding faults. Don't find faults. and let people do what they want, encourage them, nourish them, be good friends, and with that encouragement, people will grow. Okay, you'll see them grow. Leave the fault finding to the guru. Okay, so give them the benefit of the doubt, just as one accepts nectar from a stalk of poison. Okay, and if you really, really can't hold back, if you have to tell them something, if you really like dying to say something, I don't know, go to a room, lock the doors, and then shout, or something like that. Or you can go tell their spiritual authority that, okay, I saw this, I'm concerned, can you help the guy? Unless, there's something harmful or dangerous or damaging or something that's going on, then you do need to step in. But the main thing is it's all about relationships. Devotee relationships are important. In this case, Putana, although she had a good side and she had a bad side. She wanted to kill people, she loved killing babies. That was her day job, killing babies. She used to go around killing babies. That's why Kamsa especially hired her to kill Kamsa. So she used to do that, she used to take a lot of pleasure in that. But at the same time, the very act she took shelter of to kill Krishna was what a mother would do, which is to feed milk. So Krishna saw the good, and that's why in the end Srila Prabhupada explains that, here you go, the Lord accepts the least qualification of the living entity and awards him the highest reward. Okay, even if you have very little qualification, he'll see the good and he will amplify it. Okay, hundreds of times, thousands of times, he'll amplify it. So that's the mercy of the Lord. That's why this verse is very popular, that even though she tried to kill Krishna, Krishna gave her the highest position. Okay, do we have any questions or anything you want to discuss? Taruna Prabhu, yes, please. Do we have a mic for Taruna Prabhu, and then Parama Karuna Prabhu as well?
Go and go.
I think
works.
from there.
I think it works. Okay.
Yeah.
This is pretty maybe touchy subject, but let's say it's obvious. I've experienced that. Obviously, person is yes, faults, but nobody speaks about. Everybody's avoiding, just avoiding, and then offering, glorifying, and then in this way, person's illusion keeps reminding or grows even that he is great, that there's nothing wrong, and goes by, time goes by, and everybody avoids. But then other persons, when this particular person is not present, they will say what they actually think. Or sometimes we just poke the jokes, which kind of is not direct. The person still didn't get it. So time goes by, he's in illusion of himself. And then finally, things are arranged, that things culminate into somebody really authoritative maybe tells the person, and in this way loads all these years accumulation on him, which can have devastating outcome. Wouldn't be better that somebody tells him, somebody gives him indication, somebody, and finally it will be less painful perhaps than.
Yeah.
I have this experience about one person that was nearly on the point of leaving everything because he was kept in illusion. Everybody avoids, and then certain persons would see this, but still they wouldn't. They would restrain themselves. They wouldn't. So in that sense, it's kind of tricky thing. So of course, Krishna finally arranges, but this can be really painful, like taking your tooth without anesthetic or something.
Yeah. Thank you, Taruna Prabhu. For those of you who didn't hear, Taruna Prabhu was mentioning that sometimes, somebody is obviously doing few things wrong and everybody avoids it, nobody mentions anything, and sometimes years could go by when the person gets puffed up or is under the impression that everything's okay, and then years later it's like boom, and then they realize what they've been doing wrong the whole time. But it's taken years and years. Wouldn't it have to be better to just tell them in the beginning, save them all that effort?
The result, that person even started to think that actually they hate me. There's something wrong with them because nobody told him.
Yeah. So there's two things I can think of here. The first thing is that it's not that we never do anything. It's just the question this was about, it depends on two things. One thing is, number one, how big is the fault, whatever they're doing wrong. It's good to look at whether it's a personal issue, it's something that is affecting their sadhana, their spiritual life, and is it a personal issue, or whatever they're doing is affecting the whole community, something that is wrong. Okay? If something that they're doing is affecting the whole community, maybe they're in a managerial role, maybe they're in like a big role or something, then it needs to be brought up, and it can be brought up to the right authorities who can speak to them, and that needs to be addressed right away. If it is a personal issue, my point here was more of a personal thing like, okay, somebody needs to tell them, but is that person you? Maybe it's not. Okay? So you don't need to tell them, but if you are concerned about that person, there's always somebody who can tell them. And then you would go and tell that somebody to speak to them. If you're genuinely concerned about a person's spiritual welfare, we don't have to ignore it and then just not address it for years and years and years. You can address it. It's just maybe that you're not the right person to tell them. So you can tell somebody else who can tell them. Okay? And this brings to mind another point as well, that just so this doesn't happen to us, because you made a very good point, and thank you for that, because there may be something in that nature of that person as well, where he just makes it appear that his nature is such that you just go, no, I don't want to talk to him. If I tell him, he's going to do this, that, and he's going to feel bad, and he's going to kick up a whole fuss, and I would rather not deal with that. So sometimes it's good to look at our own nature. What do people think of me? Am I behaving in such a way that if I'm doing something wrong, then people won't even tell me something? We have to be, that's why humility is important, because if we are humble, then people will feel comfortable. If we're doing something wrong, then they know that, okay, he's doing something wrong, I should tell him, and he'll take the feedback nicely, and then he'll be able to implement it. But if we're just, Prabhu, what do you mean? How can you say that to me? If we carry ourselves with a personality and a nature that everybody thinks, I'm not going to speak to that guy, then we'll never make progress. So yes, so if somebody else is doing something wrong, first, is it an issue that is affecting the whole community, or is it like a personal sadhana? And secondly, it needs to be brought up in the right arena. We don't have to wait for that long, but there is always somebody who can tell them. And the personal point as well, how do we conduct ourselves so that we're ready and humble to accept feedback? Otherwise, people won't tell you anything. If you're just proud and arrogant, then even you may do so many things wrong, but nobody will ever tell you anything. And then, you never make progress. You'll find out the hard way years later. Thank you, Taruna Prabhu. Thank you. Parama Karuna Prabhu, and then... Yeah, I think it's off.
In a previous life, sometimes you hear she was the daughter of Bali Maharaj.
Yeah.
And sometimes you hear she was the sister of Bali Maharaj. So I don't know, if you know the specific. So and where is this actually from? And what was the interaction that went on between Vaman Dev and this daughter or sister of Bali Maharaj?
So there is a pastimes that I don't know either, whether she was a daughter or a sister. I've heard both from different sources. I haven't particularly read it anywhere, but I've heard the reference that it's from one of the Puranas, and I've heard it from different senior devotees mentioning different stories, and the story is the same, whether it was a sister or a daughter, I don't know, that when Vamandev appeared, then he was so beautiful, he was so charming, that Vamanadev's, let's say, daughter for now, not Vamanadev, Bali Maharaj's daughter, she was so attracted to him in a motherly way, because he was like a child. And she thought, I would like to have him as my son, and like nurture him and feed him and stuff like that. But at the same time, when Vamanadev grew in size, and he kind of took over the planets, and he put his feet on Bali Maharaj, and he took over everything, she also became angry, and her emotion changed from I want to be a mother to I really want to kill this guy because he's doing so many bad things. So within like a span of a few minutes, she had both things within her. She felt this really attraction as a mother, but also as an enemy. And that's why it is said that she came in her next life as Putana, so she got to feed the Lord, but also she went to kill Krishna like that. But ultimately, as we know, the Lord sees the good and magnifies it, so ultimately she still got the position of a mother. So that's, I don't know. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's our ultimate answer in it's different yugas. That's yeah. So but it is true, it could be. Definitely. Thank you.
So the Bhakti movement is a movement of radical personalism.
Yeah.
And I think within myself, I find a challenge with things like it's not your responsibility or it's not my problem. This attitude, I guess, towards other people or devotees within our movement, it doesn't always sit right with me. So how can we say that we're a movement of personalism if our approach to other people's anartas, let's say, is it's not my problem, it's not my responsibility?
Okay, thank you. So first of all, just to clarify, we're not saying it's not my problem, because we are definitely concerned with devotees and we want to help devotees progress. But if the wrong person does it at the wrong time, in the wrong way, you're not going to help them, you might make it worse. That is the point. You will make it worse because if they are not ready to take feedback from you, if it's not the right time for them to take feedback and if it's not coming from the right authority, they won't take your feedback. So number one, you haven't solved the problem. It's still there. Number two, now you also ruined your relationship with that person. And number three, you also irritated the guy. Okay? And it only takes a few. I know so many people who left the movement not because of big things, but because of so many little things. Okay? They get annoyed with this person and that person and that person and that person, and then eventually they get annoyed with everybody in the friend circle, and then they think, there's no point me being here, I need to find another friend circle. So they go somewhere else. So the point is not that we want to be impersonal and we don't want to help people and we want to say that this is not my problem. All we're saying is that let's do it in the correct way. Okay? And the correct way means, yes, we are concerned about that person, but am I the right person to do it? No. Maybe I'm not, maybe you are, I don't know. Maybe you are in that level of authority that you are the right person in which you will. Maybe if you're not the right person to do it, and if you're concerned about that person, then go and find who the right person would be to tell him, and tell him about it, and then they can tell him. Okay? And if you are the right person, you need to find the right moment to tell them, and done in a nice, encouraging way. So we're not saying avoid everything, we're just saying do it in the right way. It's basically sometimes, the point I brought up this point to address that sometimes we're revolutionaries. And the Hare Krishna movement is a revolution. We go against all odds. We wear different types of clothes. We wear a dhoti in the winter in like minus 10 degrees, which is ridiculous. okay? And we kind of, wear different clothes, and we kind of put a tilak on our forehead, we go dance in the streets, and we are literally going against society. And sometimes we have this mentality that we think that it is my responsibility to change everything for everybody, and it has to happen now. And if they can't take feedback from me, then it's their problem, not mine. Sometimes we have this mentality. And all I'm saying is that even though the intention is good, that we need to help the person, the method, how we do it, is also very, very important. So it's not that we don't care. Obviously, we want all devotees to grow in their spiritual life. We want them to be healthy and happy, and all of us have good relationships. But as much as we love to correct them, we also want to do it in the right way, and we want to grow relationships nicely as well. Thank you. Prayojana Prabhu, and then we call it a day. The mic's coming.
There was one occasion I spoke to Jananivas Prabhu, and he never answers a question straight away. He ponders, and then he says, I was talking about a relationship with a person. No matter what they do, there seems to be no way of doing anything about it. And he said, then you just have to let time look after it. That was one. And the other one was at Hoshya Prabhu.
Yeah.
Fantastic. He had a saying, you spot it, you got it. Now that's worth pondering, because it's the way we see things, but actually that person's perfectly okay in their own situation or whatever's happening, or it's just the way you behold it. Judge ye not, or so you be judged. So really the whole gamut of thinking we're in control is the false ego. We got to be really careful of that. And so you spot it, you got it, was one of the wonderful things he said, and I'll always remember that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prayojana Prabhu. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. Let's go have breakfast.
I wanted to say this